Welcome to The Bridge, a podcast on how leaders use data to make decisions in the military community. I'm Shannon Razsadin, the CEO of MFAN and also a military spouse. The Bridge is your go-to source for informed conversations about the programs, policies, and lived experiences that shape military family life. We're highlighting the voices and the stories that are making a difference, and we're grounded in data and driven by purpose. The Bridge podcast is produced by Rocket Data. Thank you all for being here, and let's jump right into the next episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of The Bridge. I want to say thank you to our incredible partners at Rocket Data for their continued support of this program. And today we're going to have a conversation about something that I know is near and dear to many people's hearts, and especially in moments right now, we are experiencing a unique amount of stress. And that stress permeates every single part of the family, including kiddos. So today I have an unbelievable panel here with me to talk about really what military kids are going through broadly, and then also in kind of the moment that we're in right now, what we need to be aware of and how we can make sure we're providing as much support as possible for those kiddos. So I want to go around and just do quick intros first. And Kara, we'll start with you. And if you could just share a little bit about yourself. And I think that also any personal connection that we have to this life would also be great to add. So Kara, go ahead.
Sure. Dallman. I'm the executive director of Our Military Kids, and I've been in the nonprofit space serving military families and veteran families for almost 20 years now. I am also a retired Navy veteran, married to a retired Navy veteran, and my military kids were in kindergarten and first grade when I was mobilized with the Navy Reserve after 9/11. So the mission of Our Military Kids is really near and dear to my heart because we exclusively and intentionally serve children who have a parent deployed with the National Guard or Reserve, or a parent who is in some type of combat recovery care. And what we do is we pay for their extracurricular activities. And so there's nothing that takes away stress more than being able to play the piano or soccer or learn to play the yo-yo or Japanese sword fighting. I mean, it really runs the gamut. But that's what we do in all 50 states and 4 territories.
I love it. I love it. And that's so true. It's like when you can disconnect from everything and do something you really love, that's really, really important. Amse, let's go to you next.
Hi, I'm Amse. I'm the Chief Advancement Officer at Military Child Education Coalition, or how many families know us, MSEC. I am also a military spouse. My husband served for 31 years in the Air Force as a refueler and then a strategist. So this moment is very close to our family. We have 3 military-connected kids ranging from ages 7 to 18. So we're in the thick of it. And we've lived the life for many years. So I feel very, very passionately about today's conversation and about what the kids are seeing. MSEC's mission is to support and advocate for the military child. We are the voice of the military child. We are instrumental in looking at educational continuity, social emotional learning, and wellness for our highly mobilized military kids. We want to be involved in anything that ensures educational, social emotional learning, and wellness continuity for military connected kids across the globe.
I love it. And it's so important. You mentioned they're highly mobile. I mean, every 2.5 years-ish, military families are moving, and that whole school continuity is something that is absolutely foundational, critical, all the things. I look, my kiddos behind me, 7 and 9, or no, he's 8 now. Geez Louise, I need to pay more attention. But 7 and 8 and 9, it's an adventure for sure. Jenny, we'll go to you next.
Hi, my name is Jenny Valderas. I'm the Senior Director of our Family Support Services here at Operation Homefront. Been in the nonprofit space now for about 13 years, and I am a military spouse. My husband served in the Navy for 23 years. So at Operation Homefront, our mission is to build strong, stable, and secure military and veteran families. And we do that through a variety of ways, through our critical and financial assistance programs, as well as our recurring family support programs, such as our back to school brigades and my favorite, our Military Child of the Year awards.
That award ceremony is always gets me in my feels big time. And it just foot stomps how incredible kiddos are. And Kara, you guys do the same. It's just really, it's remarkable. It truly is. So, building off of that, obviously, we're in a very unique moment right now as it relates to what's happening in the world. And so, for those who are listening, it is March that we are recording this. And so, who knows what the world will look like when we air this. But I want to talk a little bit about what our kids are going through so that we can all understand how we can best support them.
So, what's interesting is that because we intentionally focus on Garden Reserve, it's a moment where we really understand that 35 to 38% of the total force is National Guard and Reserve. And so immediately when the incident in Kuwait occurred, we looked at the 7 service members and mourned the loss of those service members. And we also looked to see if we had served their families. And one of the service members has 3 children, and all 3 of them had received grants from our military kids for gymnastics. And so our immediate response was to wrap our arms around the reserve, Army Reserve at that moment, reach out to not only the families who had died, but also the ones who had been injured. So there were some, I think 140 service members who were injured. And so those families are also now eligible for activity awards for, from our military kids. It's our opportunity to serve these families who give so much. And, extracurriculars may not be, they're not going to solve the grief and the worry and all of that, but it's at least going to help the kids understand that we see them in this moment and we want to help them for what we can. And then, on the other side of the coin, the refueling incident, and those 3 of the airmen were Air National Guard. So again, I'm very passionate about advocating for the National Guard and Reserve because they are currently serving. They're not active duty and they don't necessarily move around as much, but they do play an extremely big role in the conflicts that the United States engages in.
Yeah, it's such an important point. And oftentimes, Guard and Reserve families are not living close to a military installation. And so, with that comes a different, series of resources or sometimes lack of. And so, your organization is so important in filling those gaps for those families. And the other thing too that I think, when we're talking about the Guard and Reserve community as compared to active duty, there's so much navigating that has to happen between activation and when you're not activated that I think that many people don't understand. And obviously the kids feel that too. And so to have that level of continuity and be able to continue playing the piano and doing whatever the thing is that kid gets excited about, it's so important. So thank you so much for what you do. What about you, Amsa?
I think in this moment, the kids feeling seen, feeling that belonging, especially Guard and Reserve kids. We often hear that they're the invisible kids supporting our mission and our nation's security. And I think that this moment really speaks to that a lot of America doesn't understand what Guard and Reserve families go through. I mentioned earlier my husband was a refueler. We were also an activated reserve family that geobached, that moved several times. And so when we're looking at this moment for the kids, it's making sure, as Kara said, that they feel seen, that they feel a sense of belonging where they are, and that they have the tools that they need to support one another. So one of the things that we're doing at MSAC is promoting our student-to-student program, which is a peer support program. There are over 650 cohorts of student-to-student across the globe at installations. And we know that for kids, nothing speaks to them like feeling that they have their peers supporting them. And so that's something that we're seeing a real investment in from the kids. And now they're able to give us feedback all over the place. And so we're loving the ability to work with them to evolve that work to help them meet this moment.
Yeah, it's so important. And also, how do you, we can talk about this later, but the educator piece, making sure that educators are aware of what's happening right now and how they can best support kids during these really challenging moments. Jenny, how about you? What are you all seeing?
So we think it's really important right now, a sense of normalcy and providing confidence for our military children. So programs such as our Back to School Brigade, where something as simple as getting a backpack with the necessary supplies that they'll need for that school year can really give a sense of normalcy of, a normal day. But not only does it provide that, we also ensure to bring in the community and build that local support system, that network that I think everybody needs, not just the kids, but the families too. Our kids do move quite frequently, and sometimes you have to start over from zero. So the program not only provides, your necessities for that following school year, but also allows you to get to know your community, get to know those around you, and build that network of support that all of our military family needs and our military kids.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love most that you all do is that emergency support for people, and we know that, there are highs and lows of military life. We know that there are challenges like, food insecurity. But one of the things that's been really interesting right now is so many families have had to evacuate the Middle East and do so with very few, things with them. And so that emergency support to help people get acclimated at, wherever the home 2.0 is going to be for the time being is so important. Those emergency resources from you all, from the aid societies, it's critical to help people fill that gap in those really intense moments. So thank you for all you do there. I want to talk a little bit about um, deployment cycles, and also we can build on that to also PCSing. And I think that all this really comes down to transition moments and how do we support families and support kids through those transition moments. What are some of the things that you see, and Kara, we'll start with you on this one, in those moments of immense stress coming from the kids?
Yeah. So interestingly, with the populations that we serve, the transition is from being a normal kid whose mom or dad works at Walmart or IBM or wherever they have their employment. And the transition is mom or dad gets deployment orders, and all of a sudden they're like, wow, I'm a military kid. Like they might not really even realize what that truly means in the sense of having a parent gone for over a year and missing all these birthdays and different events. So we just awarded our 100,000th award, and the young man who received hockey fees, or got an award for hockey fees is just over the moon while his mom is away. But, it's just something that, all those games that she'll miss and all the birthdays and all the things that these military kids go through. So yeah, for our population, the transition is just a little bit different. And on the combat injured side, it's the transition from I knew who my parent was and they came back just a little bit different. And how do you acclimate to those injuries of war? And so that's where, the activities really help plug in. They keep the kids busy during a deployment, or they keep the kids distracted a little bit, or and what we love to say is let a kid be a kid during this challenging time.
It's so true. And you just made me think of something. And we're talking a lot at MFAN about operational security and OPSEC. And for kids, like there's a they have to be aware of that too. Like if we could talk a little bit about how we come up with the right age appropriate information for kids, and say if we could start with you, is you know what's too much, what's not enough, like, and obviously every kiddo is different.
I think that is the question, isn't it? Right? Because technology, the internet, social platforms are a great connector. And we saw how much it supports the kids during the pandemic. And we see how much it helps them find continuity in one another and supporting one another. But then we also see that there's a real dark side to it, and that families and educators and communities have to be involved in those systems level solutions, looking at the kids, looking at how this great enabler of support through transition is not a tool that can only be used for good, and that needs involvement from parents. And I think that we've seen that through many generations, whether it's too much phone use and should kids even have a cell phone, to before that, how much time should kids spend together hanging out at the ice cream shop versus doing community service and contributing to their after school clubs or family home life, right? I think finding the balance is a constant course correction, as we say in the Air Force. That's something that we all have to work together to like really make sure the systems are supporting the kids and working for them.
That and the balance piece, like I feel like that's like the gazillion dollar word that I can never quite get to. Like, what
Yep.
is balance, right? Like, it depends on the
It's
day, it depends on the day, the moment, as, kids are entering preteen years, especially.
yes.
But, talk a little bit about how you're helping educators know kinda what to say and how to be there for the kids right now.
Absolutely. And that's something that I'm so glad you brought up because not only have we been providing support to educators for 30 years on how to support military kids, but our curriculum team is constantly evolving the programming to ensure that educators have the tools that they need to support kids through social media channels as well as through deployments, specifically reaching out to Guard and Reserve kids, homeschooled kids. And we're really seeing that in this moment, a lot of outreach especially from those states that are accepting the kids that are being evacuated from the Middle East right now. And we've gotten a lot of outreach from those states looking for new curriculum. And so we're working with them to make sure that we're supporting the educators, that we're supporting the coaches and the after school anchors for these kids, that we're supporting bigger organizations like scouting that transition with them across the state. So when we look at educators, we're looking at that holistic support for the child and for the family.
Yeah. No, that's incredible, and it's so heartening in moments like this to know that there are organizations like each of these, that are there for, not just these hard moments, but for all the moments, right? And so, Jenny, can you talk a little bit about you all see the gamut really at Operation Homefront. What are some of the things you're seeing? If you could talk a little bit about the financial component as well, that would be awesome.
So our military children do pick up on those financial stressors in a variety of ways in our military families. They feel those changes, the slight changes, the emotional changes that perhaps come with those stressors that our military families are facing. And that's why we really think it's important that they have that support network around them. Although we say our military kids are resilient and they are, they're not immune to all the stressors that even as adults we face. So it's important to not only assist them, but recognize them for really the achievements that they're facing in such difficult times. And one of the programs that we do offer that highlights our military kids and their resiliency and achievements is our Military Child of the Year Award. We had over 1,000 nominations this year for this particular award. Just reading everything that was coming in, you really get to see the long gamut of what our kids are facing, how they're facing those challenges, and something that really sticks out through all the nomination packets that came in from all the various nominators is that although they might be facing challenges, our military kids really strive to make a difference in the communities that they are put in. They don't go there just for a little bit. They go there for a little bit and to plant a seed of change is really what we've noticed from our military children is that they are there to assist and help in that small moment that they're there, but they do want to leave an imprint, something that left behind because they want to show that they were there. Our Military Child of the Year Award really goes to highlight all of their not only academic achievements, but also showing how they integrate themselves within the communities that they are going into quite often, a new community every few years or so.
Yeah, yeah, that's such a great point, and I think that there's a tug of war sometimes that happens with the word resilient, and what that means for military families. Because yes, while they are resilient, should they have to be resilient in these moments? And what are the push pull factors that are putting them in these scenarios where they have to be so resilient? One of the things that we've been really tracking from a policy perspective at MFAN is the frequency of moves, right? And knowing that those moves, those permanent changes of the station really do create a pain point for a lot of kids. And when that's happening every, 2.5 years, it seems like it also really follows, for many, obviously, the school year, right? So it's like all of a sudden you're moving, you're packing, you're going, and it's a whole new thing come the fall and a whole new place. Can we talk a little bit about things like frequent moves and what are some of those stressors that are unique to military families that people might not be aware of? People are aware, unfortunately, of the deployments and the risk that comes with military service. But what are some of those like hidden things that most Americans aren't aware of?
I think that One of the things that most Americans aren't aware of is that military kids are just we talk about resilient, but they're capable. They're incredibly capable. Oftentimes, their grades are higher than the averages of the communities they're moving into. And they're really invested in the communities. And so these moments of transition are actually moments of vulnerability for them. And as Jenny said, they have stacked stressors. They can feel what's going on in the household, but then they're also worried about themselves and will they know anyone when they move into a new school, or how long will they be sitting alone? What test are they going to have to take? What type of math are they going to have to learn? And they're also worried about their friends. Right? They know their friends are PCSing. Maybe a best friend from 2 duty stations ago is moving abroad. And so they're carrying so much weight that a lot of adults, like, we're all running around, we're all supporting ourselves and the mission, and it can be hard to see that the kid who seems like they're thriving and who you've always trusted to be, they've got this, they fit in everywhere they go. That kid still needs support, needs to feel seen, needs that eye to eye conversation of, I see you. And I think that's something that across the board with teachers and the whole ecosystem, we need to understand that each child, not just the child that's acting out, each child needs support in this moment.
That was so well said. Kara, Jenny, any thoughts here?
Yeah, I really love stacked stressors. I think that's beautiful
I do
because
too.
that's exactly what it is. And it's interesting. I have to. I'm thinking through the lens of my own kids when they were going through all the PCSs. We were in Japan. We were in Italy. We moved quite a lot, like all families. Math was a big deal to my son, and we moved from Virginia to California, and the curriculum was different, and so my son felt behind in math the entire rest of his high school career. And he's a mechanical engineer now, and he overcame it, but it was just that whole idea that a lot of the interstate agreements that MSEC addresses, I think those are, you just cannot emphasize those enough, because those are things we can fix. Those are things
Yeah.
we can address. We can't take away some of the other stressors, but we can work on these ways to relieve stress. And yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people probably don't realize. We also had an experience in one of our duty stations where some of the kids' parents didn't want their kids to become friends with my children because they were going to be moving soon. And I mean, that perspective, just that was very, very interesting. At least they were honest, but it's just hard to think that what America should know is that, just like Jenny said, this child is going to have an impact on your child in ways that you will never understand. So yeah.
I love that. And it's gutting,
Yeah.
as a parent, right? Like, it's one thing to talk about these things, like, from our professional roles. Then when it hits your kid, it, magnifies in, that light bulb moment, like, "Oh my gosh, I get it on a whole different level now." Like, it really it's jarring, and, you wanna protect your kids, right? You don't want them to be the ones sitting by themselves, at the lunchroom. But I think that one of the things we also see building on that is the military kids are often the ones looking out to make sure that no other kid one
Absolutely.
by themselves, because they know how it feels, right? And so there are so many amazing things about these kids that I think, to both previous points, like, gosh, we gotta embrace everybody and, wrap our arms around them and recognize that kids that don't move or aren't part of this are gonna learn so many incredible things that could only really, in a lot of cases, learn from a military kid. Jenny, what about you?
I think something that gets forgotten is that our military children are serving too. Sometimes you think of just the service member, but it's our families as a whole unit. They serve together. Our military kids face challenges that, as many have said, many don't face and don't understand. But one of the things I've taken from meeting our military kids throughout our Military Child of the Year program is they go without knowing anyone. And 10, 15 minutes into it, they're all best friends, creating their own little community with one another. And I always ask them, what's the best part? Tell me something. about, where you're currently at, and where I think others might see a disadvantage of the constant moving and making new friends. Most of the time, the responses are, I have a friend everywhere I go. Gotten to see new cultures, try new things. And while it's hard at the beginning, it gives them a different perspective. And it's something that it seems that they really do enjoy and thrive on is learning about different communities. And as everyone mentioned, they want to make sure that no one feels that same feeling of being alone that they might feel at the beginning. So it's really interesting to see how they create a community within themselves without even a prompt. It's just
Yeah.
an automatic.
Yeah, it's so true. And one of the things that I have found really interesting in the work that we do is yes, they will create their own community. But to Kara's point, what she was saying, like math was different state to state, right? And so whenever we can create that soft landing for folks and create those parallels and help them maybe anticipate things that might not be exactly the same. One of the things that we've really been advocating for is like, how can we get to WIC, for example, reciprocity or school meals reciprocity, some of these state run programs that like military families are experiencing a gap in one of their most vulnerable moments around some of these things like WIC and school meals support. And so I think that from an advocacy and policy perspective, there are things that we can all be aware of to understand those nuances. And so if so and so is showing up with less, than they probably should from lunch, okay, well, let's take a step back and think about why that might be happening if they just moved and they're a family that has not been able to get the support that they may need. So I want to obviously like our kiddos are also, one thing that we say all the time is they're the future of the all volunteer force, right? So we know that the military is a family business. And so, what are some of the things that, when you think about this generation of kids in future, like if you could have your crystal ball, right, and like change something, do something that would make life a little bit easier, knowing that these aren't just like these are incredibly important kiddos and these are also people who are going to be protecting our national security, what would you guys do?
I think for our military kids, it is what we are doing. We're taking the most stressful, vulnerable times for these kids, and we're providing some distraction, some enhancement. We have one young man whose father has had 25 plus surgeries, and his brother, oldest brother, also has a terminally ill disease. So they started doing cycling as a way to engage among the three of them. And now this young man, Alejandro, is, he's being invited to all of these junior Olympic kinds of competitions, and his older sister is serving currently in the Navy. So I just think you have to bring joy to the moment where there's stress, and help them understand that, to Jenny's point, you are serving. So, that plants the seed for continued service, and the whole idea that yeah, there are organizations that are taking care of them in the moments where they need it most.
For me, I think just like Kara, we want these kids to experience being kids, right? And we want the holistic approach to them and to their childhood. And sometimes they're highly mobile, sometimes they're not highly mobile, and they still have these stacked stressors, right? When we talked about guard and reserve kids, when we talk about families who might choose to geobatch during a particularly difficult time when we look at operational security, right? So I think that those are things that, if I had a crystal ball and an ideal future, I would really want these kids to know that what they're experiencing matters. It matters to them, it matters to us, and it matters to a very grateful nation that they're serving, that their belonging is something that we all care about. And I would want kids today to look in 25 years to look back and say, I was part of this. Not I survived this. I was resilient through this. I'm impacted by this. I want them to feel a sense of pride, that they were part of forming the future that they're going to be part of.
That's beautiful. That was really beautiful. What about you, Jenny?
I think it would be just community and connecting that network support with one another and building programs that enhance that in our military family and military children. Nobody knows a military child more than another military child. And that's a safe space where you're safe to express your emotions, your fears. You don't have to put on that resiliency mask that everyone on the outside tends to see, but where you are at your most vulnerable and where it's okay to be vulnerable and express what you're facing, the stressors. So the continue building of community, of networking, of programs that really go to the heart of the military child, their emotional and social well-being.
Love it. Well, in our last couple of minutes, if you could have a message that you could get either to an adult who is interacting with a lot of military kids or to a military kid themselves, or both, overachiever, what would that be? Does anyone want to get started?
I think I would love to tell the military kids out there and the military families, right? There are so many people in and out of the military connected community, students, educators, neighbors that want to support and help you and make sure that you feel like you belong wherever you go and wherever you are in serving the mission. People want to support you, and please let us support you. You don't have to wear, as Jenny said, that mask of resiliency all the time, because we're all one big community.
Yeah, and I think building on that and the focus that I've been repeating about Guard and Reserve and children of combat injured service members, yeah, that there are resources, and I think kids have just this sense of duty, just like their parents, that's just instilled in them. And and take that sense of duty, but turn it into something where you're able to be a kid, as we've all said, live your good life, because you are doing a good thing just by being a part of this resilient military family.
That you're part of every community that you step into, that you do leave a mark, whether big or small, whether it's making a new friend, volunteering a few hours at an animal shelter. You are that community forever. If you're there for a short time or a long time, or if this is your last move, you're integrated. Don't be afraid to leave your mark, no matter how big or small that it is.
So we are going to all work to make sure these kiddos can be kiddos and that they know that they are loved. And oh my gosh, we are so lucky to have people like you who are doing this work day in and day out, because you create a ripple effect, right? Like you can feel the love from you, but that love spreads, right? And that helps make us all better, right? And certainly helps these kids navigate all the things that are going to be coming their way and have come their way, help them process that as well. Well, Kara, Amsa, Jenny, thank you so much for being here with me today. And we're going to make sure that we get information about each of your organizations out as part of this. And just thank you for what you do every day to support military families and especially these kiddos. It's great to see you.